Welcome to the Investor Agent Podcast. I'm Steve Seymour, your host, where we help transform the human mindset from scarcity and lack to abundance and wealth, one conversation at a time. Steve Seymour here with the Investors Agent Podcast. Today we have Chris and Mel McGeady on. And Chris and Mel, you guys have C&M Housing Solutions. Appreciate you guys being on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
So husband and wife, real estate investor couple.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Bliss every day, right?
Okay. We never fought more.
Okay. Well, hey, you're still here, right?
Yeah.
So I like to always get a little bit of backstory. What had you guys get into real estate investing?
You want me to kick that off?
If you want to.
So before real estate, everybody has a life before real estate, right? So I was in the fire department. Near the end of my career, I put almost 20 years in the firehouse. Mel had mentioned to me that it was always an interest of hers to get into real estate. And back before the internet and things like that, you had the 2 a.m. infomercials with, what's his name?
Oh, Carlton Sheets.
Carlton Sheets.
Carlton Sheets got you.
Yeah. So she had
Mr.
the binders and all the information from that, and had lightly brought up the fact that she went to one of the seminars, and I think there was like a bus tour, right, with flipping.
Yeah.
And it was always something that she was interested but never pursued. So it was probably, how long ago?
2016.
No, that first one that we tried.
Oh, that was like 2005.
2005, we did the index cards. We put the ads in the newspaper. We put a down payment on a house that I believe was listed at the time. Yeah. Wrote a $500 check, got scared, and never followed through with it. And then we put the binders away and never looked back for probably a good 6 or 7 years. Well, more than that, maybe about 10 years after that.
Can you pinpoint what stopped you there?
We didn't know what to do next. Some of it was that. And
Yeah, it was the fear of the unknown. We didn't want to get into a bigger mess than losing the $500. And all we saw was losing.
Oh, okay. So before we go forward, now looking back, do you wish you would have just taken a step forward at that point?
100%.
Yeah. Why is that?
It was a good price we had the house at. And if we had just leveraged some resources that we didn't know existed, meaning maybe people that have done it, we can reach out and ask for help, we could have muscled through that one.
well, and real estate's so life-changing. I mean, we waited another 10 years. We could have done a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
So like fast forwarding, now looking back and thinking, man, had we started 10 years ahead, where could we be now? Right.
Yeah.
So the time lost is probably the biggest.
But you can only dwell on that for a half a second,
Yeah.
right?
No, I only share it for people that are
Sure.
right, like about to take a step and then they get stuck with fear, because that is the intention of this podcast, is to transform the human mindset from scarcity and lack to abundance and wealth. And we know that the biggest thing that stops people from taking action, not just in real estate, but in most things that they want in life, is fear.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you guys sharing that right off the bat, that you guys had it too.
Absolutely.
Right. So then what shifted later on that, you guys had enough motivation, desire, ambition, courage, whatever it is, to take action again?
So in 2016, HGTV became popular, flip or flop. And I started to revisit that. I just wanted to do it. So I started to research it more. This guy, he was very comfortable in his job. I mean, they had like a retirement plan. He was in a union. I mean, it was great. But so getting him to switch over to that was a little hard. But I think I talked to him like a lot. It was.
So she pressured you.
I definitely pressured.
I mean, we watched those shows. If I wasn't working, HGTV was on. We were constantly watching those shows.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell the story of the specific show we were watching?
I don't remember.
You want me to tell that story? So there was one day we were watching the Flip or Flop show, and he always took a call from like an agent. They were making an offer on a house. This particular day said he was taking a call from a wholesaler. We had no idea what that was. So we started talking about that and did some research on, Google. We looked up what wholesaling is in real estate and landed on Bigger Pockets, as 99% of people do at some point in time. And then had signed up for an account and wrote in one of the forums, does anybody know what wholesaling is? We live here in Pennsylvania. Does anybody do this for a living? And somebody in our circle, Sean, reached out to me and said, I live in the Downingtown area and I do it. So we set up a lunch meeting.
We went to PJ's.
We went to PJ Wellahan's in Downingtown and picked his brain for, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours. We were there for a while.
Yeah.
And once it was put in front of me that this is a possibility and real people actually do it, then the light bulb started to light up.
That's so cool. Yeah. So once the seed was planted and then it seemed real and local, because it's one thing when you just like read about stuff, but then when it's like, oh, this person's doing it, it becomes more real.
And an important takeaway from that particular experience is where we lost the $500 in the past because we didn't want to follow through with it. We asked for help on our first couple of deals, and he was able to help us through that. So we had somebody that was experienced in doing it help us through until we felt comfortable.
Nice. And what was like the next progression? Because did you guys start wholesaling? Was that your first endeavor in real estate investing?
Yeah, the wholesale was the first one. And then she always had the passion for flipping. That's what she actually wanted to do.
HGTV stuff.
HGTV, yeah.
Yeah, well, touching on like not knowing how to get there, we didn't know, like we were going to wholesale until we had enough money to flip. And it ended up taking us like, we did a couple, we did two good size wholesales. But then, we continued to research people that were doing it. And we actually ended up finding a mentor that could like help us move forward with the flipping. So I always thought it was important. Like you always have to educate because you don't want to get into this doing it wrong anyway. So I think mentorship is probably one of the best ways to get into it, just to be with somebody who has more experience.
Ongoing too. Mentorship never ends.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to continue to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what was your experience like transitioning from wholesaling to flipping? Because they're very different businesses.
So I think the first flip that we ever did wasn't the intention of flipping that.
Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be a rental.
It was supposed to be a rental. So through the marketing for wholesaling, I think we sat on our living room floor and stuffed envelopes and we're mailing out from Driving for Dollars. And we had progressed into starting a website, and somebody had filled out a form on our website that they wanted to sell their rental. And still being fresh and not really knowing how to ask the right questions, I just said, are you getting paid every month? Yep. Great tenant. And no follow-up questions like, why are you selling this then? So we ended up coming to an agreement with him with the tenant in place, and our plan was to keep that going. Once we settled out of the property, we didn't see a dime from it.
No rent?
No rent.
What?
And oh, by the way, he wasn't paying before.
Yeah, and he wasn't paying before.
Surprise.
So we went through an eviction process on that, which took a bit, 6 or 7 weeks probably. At the end of the eviction process.
No, I think it was longer. It was longer.
Was it longer?
Like 3 months. Yeah. I mean, not that that's long, but.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of that process.
Sounds fun.
The place was a mess. So we reanalyzed the property after he had finally got evicted and saw that the neighborhood was selling a little bit more than we had comped it when we originally purchased it. So we said, maybe we flip this one. And that's what we decided to do.
Yep.
It was a pivot. It was a mess. There was trash all over the place. There was baby diapers, right? There's trash outside, inside.
It was gross.
And then from there, you kind of got the bug for flipping since you had that experience. And
yeah, I mean, I also feel like when you can see how much you can make in flipping versus what you're really making in wholesaling, it didn't make sense for us to just wholesale.
Just bigger checks.
Yeah.
And we were still working at the time too.
Right.
There's a lot. Wholesaling and flipping are two different beasts. And now we're primarily wholesaling now and realize it's like, that's a full-time job. And we weren't going to be able to put the time into that consistently while still working, but we could with the flipping by leveraging contractors and not having to do that day in and day out. And we weren't looking to do 5 at a time. We were just doing one.
And that's like that too. Like you have to focus more on volume with wholesaling in order to make what we wanted to do.
Right.
And you guys did scale up your flipping business relatively quickly. Got to the point where you're doing multiple projects at the same time.
Yeah.
And
that's credit to her.
yeah.
Well, that was stressful.
So you recommend it for everyone?
Yes. It's great.
Just like HGTV. You just cash the big checks.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like this, and then we make it look beautiful, and we get paid a lot.
That's right.
There's really no hard work involved, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like, we did luck out. We had great contractors. I don't think I ever had any bad experiences. I had small ones.
I think you're
Nothing
the first
major.
person that's ever said that.
Yeah.
I took the time. This is going to sound really dumb, I feel like, but I took the time to understand a contractor's point of view. I don't think enough investors do that. And, when sometimes I hear things like, my contractor is taking too long to get me an estimate. Well, they have other jobs they're doing and they have families, and you have to realize too, like they're working all day and they're still coming home, spending time with their family and probably doing bids at 9, 10 o'clock at night. So just learning to be patient with them and understanding that. And, I don't know. I just feel like I just tried to get their perspective. So I was more patient, I think, with them, which allowed me to grow my relationship a little bit better. I have an excellent team now. I just really love all my guys.
That's a unique perspective, and I want to pinpoint that, because anytime someone has a unique perspective versus like the status quo that contractors are the worst, contractors are going to screw you, contractors are bad, you get better results, right? Because that's your perspective on it. So
it's like a respect
so I don't think
thing.
what you said is stupid at all. I think it's actually really smart.
Well, we live in such a give me it right now world. You have to value their time just as much as they do yours.
Yeah, and what a much better way to interact. If I was a contractor, I'd much rather work with a client that has an understanding. And so just as a general rule of thumb, putting yourself in anyone's shoes is probably extremely helpful, whether you're negotiating a contract or the contractor. So that's really that's valuable information right there.
Yeah,
don't discount it and say it's stupid. So this is really smart advice.
I don't know.
And you know what? Over time, you've built a contracting team that works well together.
Yeah, I love my guys. I think we work really well together. And now that I have a group of people, like they understand me just as much as I understand them. So I see a lot of there's a lot of tension between contractors and flippers. And I just I read, I listen, I hear what everybody's saying. And I think that between the two of them, let's say from both sides, there needs to be an understanding, right? So even when contractors are saying, well, flippers are so cheap. Well, we're not really cheap. We just have a budget. We have a budget we have to try and work within. And as you get better with budgeting, you're not really cheap. You're just better at budgeting, right? So I feel like there's a little bit of conflict between the two because we just don't understand each other. So now my contractors, I explain to them, it's not that I'm trying to do this the cheapest way. It's just I'm trying to live within the budget that I've been given.
To make the deal still work, right? And then if they can understand your perspective and realize, wow, if this works, then we can do another one. So what are some of the things that you did, the extra steps that you took to help have a clearer understanding? Well,
communication is like the most important thing that you can do. I mean, for anything, taking contracting off the table, really communicating, right? So when I initially went to them, something as simple as wanting to get paid before they start the job. So I don't do that and I'm not saying I never do it, because there's a handful of times I know that I kind of have to, but 90% of the time I don't. And the way I would approach that conversation with them is, listen, this is not my money. This is my lender's money. They're not going to allow me to pay you before you do work, but I'm willing to give you weekly draws as long as we can show that there's been progress. So just simply explaining that instead of saying, well, screw you, I'm not paying you, and then move on. They're like, oh, okay, I understand that. So as long as there's an understanding, okay, I'm not going to withhold money from you forever, but we have to show progress. So that was one thing.
One thing you should note with that is that we end up buying the supplies ourselves. Anything you need for the project. So the payment that they're getting is all labor. So they wouldn't need the money up front per se until the work is actually done, because we're taking on the purchasing of the products.
And then are you having them bid labor only on the job?
Well,
so in reverse, we offer the bids.
Yeah, we offer bids.
offer, so you offer, say, this is how much we can allocate towards X, for each line item.
Yeah, she'll tell them that we have this much that we're able to budget for labor, and we'd like to get it done in this amount of time. And then it's an open conversation. It's not a demand.
Right.
Yeah. So, I rate up a scope.
That's very opposite of what most people do, right?
Yeah.
It's like, give me your best bid. So right off the bat, you're kind of almost putting them on defensive, where they don't want to underbid it because they don't want to lose the job, or they don't want to underbid it because they don't want to screw themselves, but they don't want to overbid it because they don't want to lose the job.
Right.
So you're kind of like,
Right.
here's my cards, and it probably puts down their defenses a little bit, and
which
more
is
of a negotiation and conversation versus, a poker game.
Yeah. So it's not something I did the first flip, right? And I get a lot of people when I first started doing that myself, I took bids from people. And as I learned how people wanted to get paid, I just started presenting the bid back. So that's how and then we got better at budgeting because of it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the ease of, sorry.
No. And that takes some experience and knowledge, right? Because if you're brand new, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Unless you have a second set of eyes that really understands it, because you could be saying, oh, I'm going to give you so much, and it's like way over, and no one's going to be like, oh yeah, I can't do that for that price.
Or way under.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They're going to take it. And then you also have to understand what the material costs are, and what are the materials. You have to be able to build a material list.
Right. And the
So
fact
it's
that we
more
do
involved.
that now, it makes it easier for us to have that conversation with the contractor, because it may be different area by area or what they expect to make. So we'll have that conversation with the contractor. Like, what is it that you look to make per hour? And if a job's going to take so many weeks, we can do the math and figure out that the budget they'd be looking for is this, because they don't have to factor any of the supply costs in.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you're kind of doing some of the legwork for them to even figure that out, to help them
Right.
with the bid.
And that's why Calvin loves working with us, because he doesn't have to think. He's like, where am I going and what am I getting paid?
Yeah, and a lot of contractors, they're not great at estimating. They're not great with the paperwork. They're not great they might just be great at managing the project or doing the job. So,
And he admittedly hates it. And,
Yep.
and the relationship that you guys have grown into business-wise has been phenomenal.
Yeah. So now we don't flip currently, but now I'm doing project management for homeowners, and we're using him for all that.
So let's transition the conversation a little bit from the flipping game to just general finding the deal, because whether you're going to flip or you're going to wholesale, the finding the deal seems to be the first piece of the puzzle that people have to figure out. And with that, it's also one of the biggest hurdles that I hear is it's really two hurdles. I can't find the deal. There's no deals out there, or there's no money, or I don't have enough money.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys can share on both of those, but let's start with finding the deal, because I think that's most investors that have some level of experience or some level of knowledge, and they go out there, that's usually where they get stuck.
We can talk about our first deal if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we had magnets on our cars, like we buy houses or whatever. We were driving around Reading, and someone saw it and called us, and that's how we did our first wholesale.
Yeah.
Magnets is a really good way. I know that I don't think a lot of people draw on a lot of business, but it's still another avenue. I just wanted to mention that, but there's obviously other ways to find deals.
There's free ways, there's paid ways. But the most important point to make is, and we'll kind of go into what we did and what we do now, but the most important thing is whatever you choose to do is the consistency, because just because you market something today doesn't mean it's going to turn into something 3 days from now. The consistency is really what drives moving forward. We can put a marketing campaign out and not get a deal from it for a month or 3 months. But if we consistently do it, there's going to be the ones that are ready to go right now and the ones that are ready to go in the future. So starting out, we did some driving for dollars, because essentially minus gas, that's free. Collected our addresses. We did mostly, at that time, I think we were driving around Downingtown and just mailing those addresses with handwritten letters. We also surfed around on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. People put their houses up for sale on there sometimes. And anywhere we could figure that somebody might put their house up for sale, we were there searching it out.
Anywhere but the MLS is where we were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The MLS
And why is that?
It's so competitive.
Too competitive.
Yeah. I mean, people will you want to say they're overpaying. It's probably the wrong word. they're paying more than we can. It's, homeowners that are willing to put in the work, or contractors that can pay more because they're not paying the extra labor or whatever the case may be.
What has been your most consistent lead source?
Direct mail. So where it started with driving for dollars, we'd send out maybe 50 to 100 at a time, but we did it consistently, and people started to call after a while. Fast forward to today, we're sending 15 to 20,000 a month, but the conversion's still the same.
Postcards.
Postcards, yeah.
Yeah, not letters. They're expensive.
Yeah. So 15 to 20,000 postcards per month. And then how many, is there any specific lists that you find are better for you guys?
We've always sent out a pure high equity list.
High equity.
So there's two ways I guess you could look at mail. You're either going to mail to equity and through a good sales process find the motivation, or mail to a motivation and hope there's equity. We feel like we have a good, strong sales process, so we go for the equity and have that conversation when they reach out.
And it's just a geographic area that's high equity. So what's high equity, 50% or?
We go 40 and up.
40%?
40%, yeah.
And no other criteria, just.
That's the main list that we send on a consistent basis, and we will mix in every 2 months. We mix in a motivator list, we call it. So that could be tax delinquent, code delinquencies. Am I missing sound here? There we go. Tax liens. And I think there's like 7 or 8 different lists. Those 3 have been okay for us. The rest of them really haven't. So we stick to those 3.
Done better just being consistent.
Yeah.
And then how many times are you hitting the same list?
We're hitting the same list twice in a 6-month period before we refresh the list. But the high equity we send out 4 times a year.
So that same person's getting at least 4 touches a year.
Yes.
Yeah. And then when you refresh, if they're still on the high equity list and they still own it, they're still on that list.
Yes.
So they could be getting over 2 years, 8 hits.
Exactly.
Okay. And have you found that people call on, what is there, do you have any way to track to see if they called on your first, second, third, fourth, touch, so that you start understanding?
Yeah. So in the CRM that we use, it'll track a communication log of every time that somebody calls. So if they call in, excuse me, if they call into the same number more than once, it'll track within that specific lead and show us how many times it took to get an appointment, how many times it took to get a contract, and so on.
Yeah, because I think that's the big thing a lot of people don't do is continue to hit the same list, because things change. That one postcard might have went in the trash. Mm-hmm. Someone might say, why are these people so persistent? I have to call them. Yes. Right. There's different reasons why they call, or different timing.
We're closing on a deal in 2 weeks that the original phone call came in, and I met with the seller in September of 2017.
So what's that, 5 years?
Just about 6.
6 years.
Yeah.
But that's also follow-up. So it's not just like hitting the same list.
It is. Yeah.
Follow-up is
getting
important.
them into the system is the important part.
Yeah.
Following up is just as important.
And having a system.
Yeah.
Do you guys mind sharing what system you recommend for someone getting into wholesaling?
So we started on just the basic Podio system, which I feel like if you're starting out, I think it's easy to understand. It's almost Excel based. How you have the table readout. You don't like it?
It's not aesthetically pleasing.
It's not. But I feel like it was easy to use. Right now we use a system called Forefront.
Forefront?
Yeah, which is a little more aesthetically pleasing. It has the boxes that you can slide back and forth.
Right.
But it has some automations built in. It has reminders, task reminders, calendar invites, and all the appointments. Everything's in one spot. So I really like that.
And, I think the most important thing is having a system and then refining it over time, learning it, and then staying consistent with the marketing. Do you guys take the sales appointments yourself?
Yes.
And do you mind sharing any tips on negotiation and conversations with the seller? Because, you invest so much money to get in front of someone. And then when the rubber meets the road, if you don't know what to say or what to do, I think that's where a lot of people fall short, because they probably have a lot of deals right in front of them, and they just don't know how to structure it or have the conversation with the seller to really get down to What's most important?
So this is Chris's department.
This is
But
my
first,
department.
I want you to talk about. I'm not allowed to go on appointments anymore. It's a funny story. I'll let him tell it really quick. Can I get some more water?
Sure.
I don't know if you pause it or not.
No, just go ahead.
I'll tell two quick stories. One starting with that one. So, well, to answer your question first, the most important thing that you can do on a sales call is, in my opinion, I don't talk about the house at all. We're marketing to what we assume to be distressed sellers, motivated sellers, whatever you want to call them. They're not people that are just calling a realtor up and putting their house up traditionally. There's some kind of a problem in the background that we don't know about. And a lot of times I think the mistake is made where investors will reach out or sellers will reach out to an investor and immediately we start talking about the house. When's the last time you updated your kitchen? When's the last time you updated the roof? And tell me more about the house. What's the problem with the house? And never really dive into the reason they're calling you in the first place. So I will never, ever talk about the house. I can see that with my eyes. I talk about why are they reaching out to me? What do they hope that I can do for them? And through a series of just having a normal human conversation, find out what they need from me and if I can provide a solution for it. It should be
so it's all about what do they want to get out of this?
Right. It's obvious they want to sell their house. That's why they called me. So why talk about that? Why use me to sell your house? And then if we can create that bond there, then we should be able to make a deal.
And are you having that on the phone conversation?
On the phone, I'd lightly ask a couple of questions, really about their options. Traditionally, we're not going to buy at top of the market. We get that understanding. Is it an option for you if something doesn't work out with me to list it with an agent? It's a yes or no question. And if it's a no, they'll kind of dabble into why. Also, is it an option if it's not lived in by you or if it is and you're planning on moving, is it something that you could just keep and rent out and then move to your next place? So I get a commitment out of them that they're really not going to go that route. Then maybe we may be the best option. At that point is when I schedule an appointment. I don't really go too deep on the phone. I'd like to do that in person.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's just bonding and rapport
Yeah.
face-to-face. It's a little easier. But you like to make sure you're qualifying them on the phone before you go out and drive out there and make sure that they don't have these. You almost disqualify the other options by bringing them up.
Yes.
And let them disqualify themselves.
Now, that's what I do now, but I would actually advise anybody that's doing marketing starting out to just go on everything that they can. If they invite you into the house, just go have the conversation. Even if they say, if it doesn't work out, I'm going to list it, go have the conversation.
Why is that?
Make your mistakes now.
Yeah.
Good practice.
Yeah.
Get comfortable. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable and
Exactly.
getting face-to-face.
Yeah. I remember making my first offer. I was terrified. I ran inside of burning buildings for 18 years, but that first time I had to give him an offer, I ran outside and called Sean. What do I do?
Scary, right?
Yeah.
What about, making offers that you feel comfortable making because it's probably too high?
Yeah.
I think you should feel a little uncomfortable making the offer.
Absolutely. You should get a weird look on somebody's face when you make that first offer.
The anchor.
So I didn't tell that story yet.
Oh, good.
We went on an appointment, and was that the first one that you came on with me?
No, I was on a couple. I don't like the sales process.
I don't remember what the numbers were, so I'll make them up for the sake of the story. The guy was asking $50,000 for his house. We went toward the house. It was not in anywhere of the condition that was in my notes from the lead manager, who took the phone call from the seller originally. So as we're having our conversation, I said, I'd love to be able to help you out, but my fear is that my offer is going to be way off from what you're looking for. And when it got down to it, I said, would you consider this number? I think it was like 20,000. And he backed up in the corner and he kind of was staring at the floor. It was that awkward silence that you love in that moment.
That's the body language that you look for, right? When they're thinking and considering.
He was standing across from me. She was to my left. And I looked over and I'm like, she got uncomfortable and said, you know what? Why don't you sleep on it and call us back tomorrow? Never heard from him again.
So the point of that is like when you get someone in that spot, you're not supposed to be the first one to talk again. You're supposed to wait for them. And then that's usually his sign like, okay, I'm in. Like, I got this. And we went out to the car and he said, "You're not allowed to come anymore."
Well, what they're doing is considering what you just put on
Yeah.
the table. They're considering what you asked, and probably bidding with himself.
Right.
I could
Yeah.
be done with this today.
Now negotiating in his own mind.
Right.
And I gave
And
him permission, basically.
Awkward silence.
And that was the last time I talked to him.
So that's something that's interesting, right? In negotiation, you have to get comfortable with awkward silence
Yes, I'm not that person.
and reading body language.
And it could feel like hours. I think realistically, I had a seller in his basement, and it was a bad situation. He was crying, and I feel bad about that. So, but I got him to the point where the reality was it had to be sold, or else he was going to lose the house, and it had to be sold at a certain price, or else we couldn't do anything with it. And I
Right.
said,
You can't, it's got to be a win-win. It has to work for you guys too.
yeah, and that's the way I explained it to him. And I said, "This is, we can do this, but it has to be here." I said, "What do you want to do?" And he sat there for probably 3 minutes, felt like an hour, and then we made the deal.
Yeah.
So Mel, I can tell you love that negotiation aspect of it. Now, what I want to kind of tie this in with is, having a partnership, right? And obviously you guys have your marriage partnership. We're not going to talk about today. That's not what this focus is. We're going to talk about your investment partnership and strengths and weaknesses and, finding out what you're best at. How did that work for you guys? Was it some trial and error? Is it still a work in progress?
Yeah. So I would say when we had our flip that we were doing, we were both there, like checking on it or bringing material or whatever. And when you're both, well, even if you're by yourself, if you're doing all that, something else is not happening. You're not getting more leads or doing more appointments and all that. So we talked about this in the driveway at this flip. I said, we're almost done with this. And then if we're not getting more leads or more appointments, we don't have anything. And, it could be months before you get more leads. So we decided at that time that I was going to finish the project and he would go back and do sales. And I don't know. I realized how much I liked the project management because I got to do what I wanted. I was HGTVing it, flipping out, Anyway, so I guess that's kind of how it happened, which I think people always assume he's the project manager.
So I focused wholly on the sales and marketing, and we're driving then consistent leads in, going on appointments, landing a couple of contracts, and then passing it off. I think I was doing transactions at the time too, but once we purchased the property, I was able to pass that off and then focus again on lead generation and sales appointments. And then, as she grew with her relationships and contracting and creating that system that she has now, it really it was over a period of time, but it really worked itself out great.
Did it evolve based upon what you guys liked and what you like? Was it more about what you were good at or what you liked doing?
I think it was more like,
I think it was both.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't good at sales, so someone had to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do encourage people, like if you are doing this by yourself, I don't think a partnership is a bad idea, or hiring, but that's hard to do when you're new, right?
Yeah.
So if I didn't have him, I probably wouldn't be doing this. It's just not my personality.
Well, that goes vice versa.
Or you'd have to find someone else that could do it, right?
Yeah. I would have had to find a project manager because I would have never.
You suck at that.
I'm not an organized person like that.
Right.
So going back to, the second thing that stops people that I mentioned is the money.
That almost stopped
Big
us
old
too.
money.
Yeah.
What was a breakthrough that you guys had with that in terms of feeling like we don't have enough money till how can we do this and then figuring it out?
I would like to talk about how we kind of stumbled into money.
Yeah.
We kind of lucked out, I would say. Like a lot of people who are new at this, the money is probably the harder part. But for us, when we met our mentor, she brought us money. So it was sort of, which I think now there's so many people out there that invest. You could probably find that partnership pretty easily. So if you bring the deal, finding the money may still be easy if you can find a partner. And you can do partnership per deal, that. So, so for us, that was
So you guys brought the deal And then she brought the money and then she got a cut of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would say to somebody that doesn't necessarily have that opportunity in front of them, there's that cliche term that says, bring the deal, the money will find it. Yes and no, I kind of agree with that and disagree at the same time. I think there's so many resources out there right now that you can use. The Meetup app, there's free meetups to go. Relationship building will never stop in the business, whether you're brand new or whether you're 30 years into it. You're constantly building and maintaining relationships. And those are great opportunities to meet people, contractors, lenders, flippers, wholesalers. So finding the money could be partnering, like you said, partnering with somebody that does this on a regular basis, or finding somebody that's willing to lend and creating that relationship. You know, it's not going to happen overnight, but maybe at least you start that process.
Really, yeah. Networking is probably the easiest way to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also like institutional, hard money and all that as well. But it's nice to have some private money in the background or a strategic partner. So
exactly.
It's a very similar story to mine and a lot of others. I just like to highlight it because if someone's listening, they're like, I really don't have enough money. It's like, well, if you found a good enough deal and you brought it to a meetup and you put it out there, you probably would find someone.
Right.
Put it on Facebook, put it out there to different potential investors. So with all your different experience in wholesaling, flipping, lead generation, marketing, building a sales team, working a system, and knowing what you know now, what do you think is like, obviously everyone's different and not everyone should take one path. Like there's not just one path to success in anything, but what have you guys found has been your sweet spot in terms of investing and where you feel like it's a tried and true strategy that's going to work for you and then you believe in the most?
I like flipping. I really like flipping. I don't know. What do you think? I think so
depending on the exit strategy, I think the acquiring the property has been, we've gotten really good at that.
Well, as far as which type of investing, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's really just, I guess here's the intention behind my question. Cause I can tell there's a little confusion around my question. Most people, it's information overload. Mm-hmm. Oh, this person made 25 grand wholesaling and they didn't do anything. It took 5 minutes of their time, right? Which we know that's not true because how much time did they spend before that to get to that point?
Yeah.
This person flipped and they made $100,000. So, you compare it and you're like, oh, well, that's a bigger check, but it's heavier lift.
More work, yeah.
And, it's a catch-22 because obviously wholesaling has probably the lowest barrier of entry, but it may actually be one of the higher skill sets than flipping, but it depends on your resources, right? And
I think they
what
both
resources
have a
you
struggle.
have available.
I don't know that you can compare and say one's better than the other, I guess, right? Because like you said with flipping, if you don't have contractors or you have to fish through that and figure out schedule, and if you don't know how to stack your contractors, like our first flip took 9 months because we didn't know what we were doing. And with wholesaling, we are spending a lot of money for marketing. And then if you don't have a buyer or if you get it too high, there's just so many struggles between the two. So it depends.
Well, I think that answer can change over time.
Yeah.
Because as we really got good at building a system around the flips, we knew how to buy all of the houses that we were flipping because it was built into our system.
Mm-hmm.
So where we pivoted to wholesaling, now we're buying for other people with the budgets that we would expect to spend ourselves, and that doesn't work for everybody. And that was a learning curve for us, where we knew 100% of these properties we put under contract, we could flip these.
You can make it work.
Right.
That's actually why we started flipping, because we did start with the wholesaling and transitioned to flipping because we're like, nobody's buying these deals, but we know there's money to be made.
Yeah, you knew there was money.
So we bought them, and that's what got us started flipping.
Yeah.
But what's nice about flipping is you don't have to do as much volume to make decent money.
So you guys have kind of figured out how to blend the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then based upon the market or any shifts or maybe, depending on where you're at, whether you're looking more for immediate cash or you want a bigger chunk down the road, you can kind of pick and choose.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I appreciate you guys being on. I don't know if there's anything else you want to share in terms of just your general real estate investing experience, anything you want to, any little last words of wisdom that you have for anyone that's listening?
Don't ever be too proud to take advice.
No, that's good. And as if you didn't have enough on your plate already, she became an agent a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
They add that to the plate.
So that's nice too. Any leads that don't fit for cash offers, we're listing.
It's another avenue.
Stream.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chris, any last words for anyone out there that's either struggling to get started or scaling?
I would say anybody that's struggling to get started to take the advice we talked about before. Reach out to somebody that's doing it. Even if you're not partnering on a specific deal, take them out to lunch. Start a conversation with somebody. Ask them how they got started. They had the same struggles probably that you're worried about right now. So if you have a relativity there, you may be more comfortable actually taking that next step forward.
Awesome. What areas do you guys cover? And then my follow-up question is going to be, how can people potentially work with you?
So we are primarily in Berks and Chester counties, and we tap into the western part of Montgomery County and the eastern part of Lancaster. We're nestled right in the center of all four.
And who might want to get to know you guys and work with you?
We love newbies.
Yeah.
You like helping people get started?
We do,
love it.
yeah.
Yes. We're happy. He's really good at teaching sales, and I love teaching about project management.
I would say probably the easiest way to get in touch with us is either look us up on Facebook, Chris McGeady or Mel McGeady. If you go to our website, it's sellmyhouseasis.com. You can reach out to us on a form there.
And if you want to sell your house as is.
Yes. We paid for that one.
It was a 2-for-1.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys being on. We'll post all the information below, and hope you guys found some value in this conversation. And a little shift in your mindset now can go a long way over time. So
Absolutely.
Take it in and, reach out if you guys need help. It sounds like Chris and Mel will be happy to help you guys out.
Yep.
Sure thing. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Investor Agent Podcast today. We hope you found it valuable. Please tune in weekly at theinvestoragents.com.